Hello, everybody. Thank you so very much for watching. It is EAR, End All Racism. Tonight, we're talking about economics. It's the beginning of a series. And we've got Star Child and we've got Comedic King with us. Good evening, lady and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
King, we're going to start with you because we want you to kind of let everybody know where information's coming from, and that this is not this is not just the three of us sat around over a cigar and coffee in Louisville and decided the future of economics. That there is one really good source, and there are several sources for people that want to understand how to not only advance themselves but to advance their own communities. Is that right?
That's right. And just so I can put that out there, disclaimer: I'm by no means professional in this field. I don't spout to have this secret knowledge. I just read, and I
Mhm.
enjoy reading history and learning, and I enjoy applying it because I think that's the most important thing. So, yeah, Barry, you're absolutely correct. So, just starting off, um, because this is a lot. This really, I know we're doing a three-part series, but really this needs a class because it's a lot of information, and it's a lot of information moving forward too, because the future has a lot of information that I don't think most of anybody, even my people, are aware of. So the first thing I'll start off with, um, in the search of information for economics. So we're starting in the past, and we do like we normally do. We're working our way up to the present. So we're gonna start in the past, go to mid 1900s, and work our way to the present and future. So when we talk about economics and based on race, um, I want to start this off by dedicating everything, all of my knowledge, to this book. This book has everything you need to know about the maldistribution of the wealth, land, resources, and everything therein to the white dominant society. This is Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. Um, Another book that I'm going to be referring to when we talk about the future is Powernomics. Now, I personally haven't started on that book, um, but I have it in my collection and I plan on starting it. I only have probably like 50 pages left in this book to read. So um, I'm just going to give you the information that I know. And, I expect everybody out there to go do the research yourself and go learn this knowledge yourself. Um, I'll let you jump in, Star.
Yeah, so I think tonight we're just going to really kind of dive into, kind of the framework of economics in this country and the division and I think the effects of our history here in America and how that's impacted, elements such as segregation, elements such as the family structure. It's just going to be a really, really good um, set of what set of wealth that I mean a set of information that we can all kind of live by and take and do a further study. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So, just starting off, talking about the past when we talk about race and economics, um, the word power. Power is a very important word when we talk about the maldistribution of wealth, resources, and power. Okay. So, when we talk about the different kinds of power and the lack of in our community, um, let's just talk about group power. Okay. Now, what do people define as group power? So, group power is a group of people who pull their assets, who pull their resources, who pull their ideologies together, and they come as a collective to pretty much compete with their opponents, so to speak. So, when we talk about group power, we talk about America becoming a group power and Europe being that base. Okay. Another power, because like I said, there's so much information, so I have to fly through things just so you can get the idea. So another one is institutional power. So what is institutional power? Institutional power would be like your religion sectors, or would be like your corporate companies. It would be governing bodies, anything dealing with institutions wielding their power in a way that would impact people's lives is what we call institutional power. Then we talk about wealth power. What is wealth power? So this book gives a good definition of wealth power. So it says Jews and white Anglo-Saxon Protestants have uncontested control over a disproportionate share of America's wealth. Wealth gives them options. What they're saying is that if you have wealth, then you automatically by default have power. And
Mhm.
what do we mean by that? That means that you have the opportunity to dictate policies, to dictate activity, to dictate behavior. You pretty much can do anything.
Buy
Just
your way out of trouble.
Yeah,
exactly.
we've seen that.
There's too many examples that represent that wealth equaling power. So start. How do you
Yeah,
feel?
let's unpack that a little bit. I mean, when we think about how this country was started, it was feudal lords, basically, that came here that didn't want to sit under King George anymore. They came here and they wanted their independence. And so our Constitution on its face says that you can become a citizen if you are a white male and you own land. So that is the crux and the nexus of how that construct of wealth was kind of expanded in this country. And so when you have that small group, that means that the more of those people that there are, the more that they're going to uphold that law and that that concept of we are the elite and only the elite can be a part of the citizenship of this country. And so whatever woman they brought with them, she was just kind of a peripheral beneficiary of that wealth. So we have to keep that in mind when we talk about. And then at the bottom of that food chain were Africans and Native Americans, and sometimes African natives that were here before, but that's a whole nother show. But so there we start to see this hierarchy of wealth and wealth gathering and restriction of who can have wealth in this country.
It's kind of like the analogy that's been used before of playing Monopoly and starting out without any money and everybody else owns all the properties.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yep, that makes it
That's a great
impossible
analogy.
to succeed. So then let's talk about other p words, power. So numerical population power. All right, I'm gonna read something from the book. I'm gonna be reading from this book a lot, you guys. I want you to see how awesome this book is. So in a democratic society, the numerical majority wins, rules, and decides. I'm gonna stop right there. That's all I need to say because that in itself is a whole nother conversation. So that shows you that in our society, it's not political affiliation, it's not ideology, it's a majority rules. And that's why I said race is a team sport. And that's why people have to really get this concept about the race, about it being a race. Later, when we talk about the first settlers of this country, we're going to talk about how it was a race in Europe between the countries, France, great, all the countries. So when we talk about numerical power, the goal is to always be the majority, so the majority can rule. It's that simple. Um, so the next one is political power. And political power is a pretty big one. So there's a diagram on here because you would have a lot of people that say, black people they've gotten a lot further in this country. We elected a black president. We have a lot of elected black officials. So on this table, and taking effect, Dr. Claude, he is a forensic historian. Okay, so that means he's the only one of his kind. That means that he has dedicated his life to really taking apart history and studying.
Mhm.
It's a more in-depth analysis of history. Okay, so this isn't just something he pulled out of his ass. Excuse my language. This is something that he dedicated his time and money to.
Yeah.
So on this chart, this is a chart that says comparison of the number of black elected officials versus black socioeconomic conditions. Okay, so in 1964, we had 103 black elected officials. We had an unemployment percentage of 10.8. We had a black prisoner rate of 33%. 34% were under the poverty line, blacks, and 53% was the per capita income.
Can you repeat those numbers again? I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
King,
you're fine.
but
Your volume.
did you say the black community had a prisoner rate of 33%?
Absolutely. So that means every 33 out of 100 black people were in prison.
33 out of 100 black people were imprisoned in 1964.
Exactly. But hold
That's
on,
by design.
that's not the wowing part, okay?
Mhm.
Because you hear that all the time, don't you, Barry? Well,
Mhm.
you all have advanced. You all have black politicians. You all got, see, people love Barack Obama, okay? And that's how they play that trick on. They pull that damn shade on us to make it seem like something's there when it's not. So I'm a fact, as you can see, there's a long column. I'm just going to skip to 1992. We had 8,000 black elected officials. The unemployment rate was 14.6 versus in 1964, 10%.
10.
Black prisoner rate was 45%,
Yeah.
close to 33%. The poverty line was 34%, and in 1964 was 34%. And per capita, the income was 59%. So what this is showing you is that having black elected official doesn't do a damn thing.
No.
And the reason
No.
it doesn't do a damn thing because we got to go back to what I said earlier: majority rules, which means that hey, you all can integrate, you all can have black politicians, but you're gonna instill our ideologies, and you get all of that blackness. Okay, so now how does that play into economics? I'm going to get into that in a little bit and
Yeah.
connect it all together. So
Yeah, and if I could just say, we talk about political power even after Reconstruction. There were a number of black senators, and we had Black Wall Street. There were times in this country where black people just said, we're just going to segregate from all of that because they had been through the trauma of slavery and living with people that hated them. And so they said, we've done all the work. Economically, we can build our own. But the majority, in all of their angst and their hatred, basically said, how is it that those people can come out of slavery and be working for me just 10 years ago and now they're thriving? Nope, can't have it, can't have it. We don't want them as a part of our majority, so we'll just burn down everything they do and we'll just kill them in the interim or imprison them. And then too, a second point is that just because you have political power or have a seat at the table, that doesn't mean that you don't have a folding chair and you're not moving from place to place, because you're really not a part of the picnic, when no pun intended, but you're really not a part of the party. So you can have a seat at the table, but that does not guarantee that you'll have power and the ability to do anything with that seat that you have at the table for your people.
and it's almost called the illusion of power.
Of inclusion. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did an episode and I included the story from Indiana politics here, state politics, about them booing the Democratic representatives, the two black representatives that were talking about an education bill being discriminatory, and talking about their experiences and their past with discrimination, and how Republican politicians were booing them. And that's 2021. And
Barry, if that doesn't represent clearly that our ideologies are laughed at and booed, I don't know what will. And that's why I always say I don't argue with white people.
Yeah.
If you can either practice cognitive dissonance and not accept it, or you can say, hey, maybe we have something here. So that's why I used to argue with people on Facebook. Like when you had Angry Knuckles on the show, I was just here to educate him on factual information. I wasn't going to argue or debate. So
we talked about the majority a little bit too, King. Really, the illusion of the majority has been twisted, has been turned on its head. White people are still the majority in this country, but they're very rapidly losing that advantage. And so now that they know they're losing that advantage, the only way that they know how to hold on to the power is through violence.
Mhm.
I mean, and I'm not just saying that just to be saying that, but every day we get that example. Every day we get that example. And, we hear these stories about, the white supremacist group that are infiltrating the police precincts, and white people call the police on black people because they're comfortable. They know who they're dealing with. And they know that they're there to maintain that status quo and to maintain that power by any means necessary.
Yep.
So let's just talk about that. That's who we're dealing with, and the undergird of power in this country.
Yep. Yep.
And the whole QAnon thing is based on that white supremacist
That's right.
notion that our kids are in danger, that we're losing our freedoms, that we're going to lose our wealth and our country. And that's because the 2%ers have convinced them that the only reason they're not part of the 2% is because of all the benefits that go to communities of color and to the Black community. And that's economics. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that is economics, even though it sounds like it's more, it's more sociology. It's still, that's economics, because those people now are ready to kill and die to save their country, because of the belief system that has been implanted in their head, that the only reason they're not part of the 2% is because of immigrants and aliens and those not like us.
Yeah. I mean, and when you think about it, I mean, it's such a travesty, but the 1% or the 1.5% and 2%, they have made a business out of divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
At every level,
Absolutely.
at every level. Driving through the mountains sometimes, and I see people living in abject poverty. And my heart bleeds when I see people that don't have what they need. I don't care what color you are. If you don't have what you need mentally, physically, psychologically, but those same people will turn around and look at me as though I'm the devil, because I should not be in the position that I'm in, or who am I to even
Who are
look
you to scrape and claw your way up? Who are you to scrape and claw and make your way up to some place that they have not been able to obtain?
Right.
I mean,
So
that's
get out of that mindset.
yeah.
And Barry, just a sidebar, I keep laughing because I'm taken away from that statement. They call Black people Canadians. I'm like, okay. You should have heard me earlier. I'm like, okay, I'm a Canadian now. Okay, all right. Okay.
And King's referencing an earlier episode this morning about the QAnon thing, and I can verify that. My cousin told me that like a year and a half ago.
I've heard it. I've heard it
before this all started. He says, them GDN, oh, I can't say the N word, Canadians, ha. And I said, what, Canadians? Yeah, we can't say the N word at work anymore, so we just call them Canadians.
I've heard that.
And I'm like, obviously I haven't talked to him in a long time, and that's sadly that's my last memory of him.
Yeah, when you think about it, that air of superiority is just such a flawed it's just such a flawed concept when you think about it. I mean, when you have to, it's like Toni Morrison said, if I have to be tall because you're on your knees, does that really make me superior? That mediocrity, the mediocrity that people espouse in the plight of their supremacy, or in the stream of their supremacy. And it doesn't make people want to have to be any better, because they know that they're going to benefit from the system. To me, that is one of the crumbling bricks in the American structure. This idea of white supremacy and the mediocrity that that people in this country operate from. And then if you're better than them, then they get mad and they want to kill you.
Right.
So that right there is just a destructive, it's just one of the most destructive cornerstones in this country, I believe.
Is white supremacy just a United States anomaly, or is
No,
white supremacy a global factor and a global impactor into economics?
Right.
it's absolutely global.
And I'm going to touch on that here in a few minutes. I'm working
Mhm.
my way to it.
Okay.
If y'all haven't noticed, I like to do stuff in chronological order. I'm weird. So,
That's good.
What about that?
Yeah.
so, just moving along and getting into the juicy stuff, people are like, okay, where are we going to connect the economics? It's coming to you. So, when we talk about impediments to um, not only social empowerment, but economical justice, the first obstacle was the Constitution. Okay, so during the formative years, the Constitution outright excluded blacks from the privileges of citizenship, the acquisition of wealth and power, and the enjoyment of the fruits of their labor. So, Barry mentioned starting out on a monopoly game with all the money and land, and then you got this person coming into the party way late and saying, "Hey." So that's what that alludes to when we talk about the Constitution. The Constitution excluded us up until the new Constitution was formed, and I'm going to talk about how that also had its faults that ended up pushing us further back. So when we talk about the early framers of the Constitution, they didn't anticipate us being free or citizens, so they didn't anticipate us on having any fruits of labor in America or having any type of ownership. So that's the most deadly sin that America did, to chop off the legs, because we pretty much had a game of doctor played on us, and that chopped the legs off. All right, so um, I don't want to start if you wanted to comment on that, because I was going to move on to the next one.
Oh, no. I'm gonna let you. You're spot on.
Okay, so obstacle number two, racism in the Supreme Court and legal system. So that chopped the arms off. All right. So when we talk about the Supreme Court, what was the Supreme Court originally drafted based off of? The Constitution.
Mhm.
So the Supreme Court was formed to have ideologies of the Constitution, and the Constitution is inherently racist, that says blacks have no rights. They are considered pretty much equal to a land animal. How can black people depend on the Supreme Court? And throughout history, we haven't been able to depend on the Supreme Court. So, when we talk about the Dred Scott decision, that was a decision that pretty much said that we're equal to a land animal. We don't have any rights that,
Mhm.
white society is bound to respect. People don't realize that decision's never been reversed. It's
Nope.
still the same outcome in 1857 than what it is. So nothing has changed about that. So what signal does that send to society? That's saying that our rights don't matter.
Don't really exist. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And the
So
danger of that, leaving some of these laws open, and even in some of these southern states, even some of the black code laws that Higginbotham talks about in The Color of Law, leaving some of those open, those laws open in these states, it is a gaping hole that creates a vacuum of injustice.
yep.
And I will say that again, it is a gaping hole that creates a vacuum of injustice, because some smart lawyer or even a judge will take those laws that are on the books, and in any given time, in any given case, they will use that law because it's never been rescinded or amended, and they'll take that law and they'll incarcerate someone based on that law. It happens all the time.
Yep. And even when we think about the physical, but the mental, uh,
Mhm.
you know, pretty much Justice Taney wrote that blacks are inferior beings and as property, they lack citizenship and have no rights, and that white men are bound to respect. That is the thought process to this day of the Supreme
Mhm.
Court and the justices that sit on that board. So when we think about a governing body that can protect our rights, guess what black people don't have? A
Mhm.
governing body that's going to
Yeah.
protect our rights. It protects the rights of the citizens. And if we go back to the original Constitution, the citizens are white males. Okay.
Mhm.
And that to this day, just look at all of the major cases the Supreme Court has presided over. you will see that it is highly at an alarming rate, probably 98% favored white males.
That's right.
You can't ignore these anomalies, or not anomalies. You can't ignore these facts and these statistics. So when people tell me, "Oh, equal, blah, blah, blah," all this bullshit. Excuse my language.
No.
Bullshit. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And also too, I think the danger of that is, one of the worst things that we could have ever done is to hang our hat on civil rights. We got caught up in the Constitution. Well, the Constitution says that we allowed people to map out how we ask for our rights in this country, when in essence, we should have been asking for human rights. I think that we would not be in such a detrimental state on a lot of different levels if we had initially asked for our human rights. And I think that's actually a global anomaly. Versus, civil rights, that just means that laws can be changed.
Yep.
But when you talk about human rights, that's an inalienable right that's given to you by God. Do you know that a lot of prisoners, a lot of people in prison now use that sovereignty as a just, they present a case from a sovereignty perspective so that they can go back to jurisprudence. They can go back to jurisprudence and ask for their rights as a human being, inalienable rights that were given to them by God. So basically they reset the clock. They go outside of the Constitution and the law and say, God says that I can do this. There are a lot of people that are hip to that, and they get time reduced based on that.
Yeah, and I haven't really dug into the studies of the Moors, but I think the Moorish community in America, I think that's something that they've done that's very similar. Is they've said
sovereignty.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I promised I'd talk about the new Constitution, the 14th, 13th, or 14th, and the 15th. So when we talk about that, it had its positives, but it definitely had its negatives. It definitely was taken advantage of. So the court interpreting, we're talking about the Supreme Court, you guys. This is what I'm talking about, that 98%, kind of rulings are in favor. This is an example of it. The court interpreted the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments broadly and applied them to many sanctioned situations unrelated to blacks. By the turn of the century, the court used new constitutional amendments primarily to protect the wealth of major corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another example of economics negatively impacting us. The 13th, 14th Amendment was specifically only for black people, but they
Mm-hmm.
used it, and as a matter of fact, they barely used it for black people. They used it more in a corporate manner for companies to help lawsuits and litigations and all this crazy stuff. So that displaced a lot of wealth because we didn't have any legal backing. We didn't have anybody in our corner to fight for us. And we're talking about the past, so that impacts today.
Absolutely, it impacts today. You mentioned corporations, and one of the recent Supreme Court rulings has been the idea of corporate personhood, that the corporation can be considered a person.
Yes.
Now, how devaluing is that to the three of us to think that we would be looked at on the same level as Walmart, that we would be expected to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Without as many votes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
As many votes.
it's just and it is smart people using what is there to create interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
And King keeps saying new constitution, and keep that in mind. Every time the Constitution is amended, it becomes a new document.
That's right.
Because each amendment subsequently potentially impacts everything else that was written before it.
That's right. Is it
So
versioning? Yeah. When we talk about the new Constitution as well, let's look at how policing aligns with the new Constitution, and where we talk about corporations, where those three amendments, or those three those three elements of the Constitution directly impacted Black people negatively, because the 13th says that you can be an American citizen lest you're not a criminal. And so what does the United States do? They over criminalize Black people, because you have to keep in mind Black people just walked out of slavery, and then the labor, people still needed to make money, white people still needed to make money, and the work still needed to be done. And so they had to find peonage, which was, sometimes called slavery by another name. You could get arrested for just like standing on the street or looking at someone the wrong way. They found a lot of ways to criminalize you, and they're still doing it today.
Absolutely.
So that they can put you back in the system. And there are people that say that peonage was worse than slavery, because they would work people to death in peonage just to get them off the books, and so that they could go collect other people. So, that new Constitution was, I dare say, kind of the one of the major factors that strengthened policing in this country.
So I'm gonna push along because there's a lot of stuff that I want to try to cover in a short period of time. So another impediment is absence of group economics and capitalism in the Black community, and I'm going to talk a lot about that when we talk about the future. So I'm not going to talk about all these problems without giving
Solution.
giving solutions. So
Mhm.
I don't really need to even talk much about the absence of group economics. We know that pretty much from the 50s on up, we stopped practicing group economics. We practiced group economics for a short period of time, and it really, really helped. Then we stopped. Okay. And another impediment, which kind of coincides with the lack of group economics, is integration. Integration is the reason why we stopped practicing group economics, because we swear that the white man's ice is better than the Black man's. So we pretty much gave up our own businesses to have a seat in the front of a white man's bus. Okay. We wanted to go to a white man's theater, so we gave up a lot of these Black-owned businesses just to be accepted and integrated into white society. So that was to the detriment of our very, very detriment. And this is kind of off subject, but it's fast forwarding a little bit. But this impacted our wealth. Now, during the Industrial Revolution and during like the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, Black neighborhoods were thriving. Okay. We were the envy of a lot of other groups in America. So, what did white America do? They built highways in all of the major Black neighborhoods leading out of Black neighborhoods. It's called the Highway Act of 1956. And what that did was, as soon as pretty much Black people started moving in the white neighborhoods, white people started moving out to the suburbs. So they said, all right, we're going to build highways through, not around, through Black neighborhoods to the suburbs. And we're going to make it to where no Black businesses are going to get any business. Okay. So I think people should really look into that, because that definitely impacted our wealth in the late 50s and the early 60s. So that's another obstacle that we need to talk about at a later date, because that really did impact.
Yeah, and if we can talk about redlining as well, that had a great detrimental impact on Black families and Black generational wealth. It's a well-known fact that if you own property, and of course that's one of the basis of the Constitution, you had to own property. But if you own property in this country, you have some level of wealth that you can either perpetuate into the next generation, or you can benefit from it, just based on economics and based on the level of taxes and the wealth, the
Resources.
Yeah, resources. Yeah. So when we talk about redlining in this country based on race, you could take an area that was predominantly Black, even though the land was good and you had Black people living very well. The government created these maps, created these maps for redlining and said, yeah, that's a yellow line, that's a yellow zone, that's a red zone. We're going to devalue the property over there. In fact, let me just throw a couple of factories over there to take it down to the next level and contaminate these people. So it's always been, we've always had to face these obstacles that have been imposed upon us from the federal government.
Can
I
you
think
can you give a brief definition of like redlining and gentrification so that those that don't know will be able to follow what you're saying?
Sure. So in most major cities, especially in the 50s and 60s, you had, now that you had the influx of Black people, especially in the inner cities, you had the influx of Black people. So what the states would do and the federal government would do, they would come in and create these maps. And basically they would zone based on, they would have a color coded zone, and if Black people lived in that area, you could buy a house over there, but it would be devalued. And then what the realtors would do, they would use that red zoning to say, hey, I can sell you a house over here versus sell you a house maybe in a blue zone. And so they use that. That's why a lot of these laws, the housing laws, came into fruition, because realtors and the state government and the federal government was using the red zoning to say, I'm going to put all the Black people over here. Before civil rights, that's the only place that you could really live. You hear the stories of like Sidney Poitier and Nat King Cole that had to get a white realtor to go in and pose as someone, as a buyer for the house, and then these Black people would move into that's the only way they could get in, even though they had the money and the wealth. The states and before the Civil Rights Act, they could not move into more prominent areas. And so that stood on the books for a very long time.
And that's still being practiced today.
Oh, absolutely.
Practicing this, they do it a lot more secretive because it's illegal, but it's still being practiced today. And I know a lot of people who were denied loans with perfect, not perfect, but they had really good credit because there was an area that was predominantly white and they were Black. So these types of things, they still happen to this day. So
and then we talk about gentrification. There's when you look at the patterns of especially inner city, things will start to happen. Let's use Baltimore as an example. The crime rate gets really, really high, and so white people, they have this nostalgia about Baltimore. And then when the crime rate gets too high, they flee out to the suburbs. And then something will happen, and white people decide the crime rate will go down, and then they decide to come back in. So the property values go up. Meanwhile, these Black people are being pushed out of their homes that they've owned, for 3 generations, and they're being pushed out of their homes. The white people are coming in and they're buying them for pennies on the dollar. But then as soon as the white people move in, the worth of it goes up. So people are really upset about gentrification, even though they don't have the resources sometimes to maintain the homes. They know that once a white person moves in, the value is going to shoot up. And so people sit on these houses even though they can't afford to maintain them.
And for those watching that want just a really basic concept, after World War II, the economic potential became greater for all people in the United States, including the Black community, who began working in a lot of factories, who began getting middle income wages, became money-wise part of the middle class economically. Socially, they were not deemed anywhere near part of the middle class. And this gentrification and the redlining and segregating the neighborhoods through local politics instead of on a national level is what was actually happening. And World War II ended, and a lot of the Black community moved into the cities because they had money to buy good places. And then those places became valuable. And when they become valuable, the white community wants to come in and take those places. And that is what gentrification and redlining is on a basic elemental level, just so everybody's up to date on everything we're talking about.
Excellent. Excellent.
So just to, to kind of rewind a little bit, I don't know how this ended up in this section. But this is called White Bridges to Wealth and Power. So now I'm going to talk about the actual events that led to the European culture and the European people developing and accumulating a mass amount of wealth. So when we talk about the 14th and 15th century in Europe, the continent was riddled with a lot of poverty, famine, feudalism, just like Star said earlier, and disease. And meanwhile, West Africa, they were flourishing. They had a lot of strong empires that were considered trading centers. They also had some of the world's finest artifacts, and they had a lot of minerals, gold, oil, they had everything. So they were the envy of the world, so to speak. So that's what kind of attracted early on the European and the Arabian or Arabs. That's what attracted them to that continent. Was out of envy. They said, we want those riches, we want that power. So when we rewind that far back, we have to really look at where it all started. And that's where it started, because
and let's not forget intellectual wealth.
Exactly.
It was the cradle of the world.
Exactly. This is where a lot of people came to gain a lot of information on just being civilized,
Before they burned it down.
Exactly.
Before they burned the library down in Alexandria, but I digress.
The Library of Alexandria, those documents, they've got to be somewhere. I hope they
Vatican.
They could be in the Vatican, which the fact Jesus might be a person that is not white might be something very probable that's being hidden by a lot of high religious people. And that's another, tying in this QAnon thing. One of the QAnon theories is that Joe Biden is just a temporary president, and he knows it, and he accepted it because they're waiting to capture the Pope and reveal the truth about the Catholic Church. So yeah, hey,
Man, how do
Good drugs. I need whatever drugs they're taking.
that's what happens when you stray from facts.
Yes.
And then you allow people to usurp knowledge.
Yep.
Yeah, they put just a little tiny truth into a thing and then twist it with a whole bunch of really giant untruth. And you catch on to the truth, and then all the untruth envelops you.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like the zombie apocalypse to me.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So King, get us up to like the 1960s or even closer to where we're at for picking up next time.
Okay. So you want me to start winding down?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to kind of finish what I was talking about, that pretty much Africa was drained of all its resources and human capital, and just fast forwarding to 100 200 years later, black labor was pretty much what's spawned a lot of wealth. So there's three sources of white wealth that we're going to talk about in the next episode, because that really comes to kind of like 1900s lead up to current. One of them is inherited wealth, and each one of these three that I'm going to name, it needs its own show, really. But I have to condense it, because this book has 250 pages of information. The second one is land ownership, and we talked about that a little bit, but it goes so much into depth, even talking about how the Seminoles, they free blacks and Native Americans own most of Florida, and that pretty much was stolen from them. So we'll talk about that in a later episode. And then the last one is black labor, free black labor. And we're talking about 100 plus years of black labor. And that's what created this huge base level of white wealth, and that pretty much locked and boxed us into the permanent underclass, so to speak.
And made America the wealthiest nation on earth because of all of those people that capitalized on that free labor.
Exactly.
Lest we forget.
Exactly. And Europe. meanwhile, pretty much from the 14th and 15th century up until the 17th or 18th century, Europe, France, England, all of these countries, they were competing. That's where the race came from. They were competing. And they got filthy, filthy rich off of draining Africa and getting all that free labor and participating in the slave trade. So when we talk about economics, we have to take a trip to the past to understand how this happened, because at the end of the day, like Barry, I'm going to keep convert to the Monopoly game. It is impossible for Black people or anybody of that matter that's non-white to catch up or to compete when we have these devices or this structure, as Star called it, in place, and it has to be redistributed. Okay, and that's how we got originally on the subject of reparations, and we're not even talking about money. We're talking about reparations of land. We're talking about reparations of a lot of things, because this is going to have to be the biggest reparations payment in the history of history, in order to get us on track to be able to compete and to correct what was wrong. So
Reparations of dignity.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's interesting. You talk about Africa. America took bodies. Europe took land. When you look at the pact of 1864 and 1865, where the Europeans divided up Africa, the map of one solid continent. And then when you look again, and after they divided it up, it was a travesty. So America took the bodies, but Europe took the land.
Yep,
When you're speaking about the African continent.
Continent, yes.
They redrew boundaries.
But on a bigger scale, you can apply that to the world itself, because what King says, the term race itself comes from the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, the Italians, the major explorers from Europe that became conquerors of land and of people.
Yeah.
To interject too, real quick, Barry, I want to clear something up, because a lot of people have said it. You've said it. People say Europeans are the first settlers of this country, came to America to flee, political injustices and all that. They came to this country the same reason why every immigrant comes to this country, to pretty much the American dream, to get free land and free labor. And like I said, these were things that the English and the French were pretty much fighting over. They were like, okay, who can get over the quickest to establish this piece of land? Because a lot of the times they got your poorest, most criminalized people to do the exploring, so they didn't have money to get up. Come on, man. That would be like saying that.
Because if you lose them, it's no big deal. You send them over,
Yeah.
So America was founded on the principle of capitalism, and it wasn't because they wanted to get away from the king or establish a new. No, it was because Europe wanted to expand its reach, and it wanted to expand its operation, and it was pretty much founded out of greed.
I mean, you think about it, the French actually owned about a third of America.
Absolutely.
And had to sell it off.
Yeah. Until Jefferson became president, and the pig in the poke buy, the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
Basically from New Orleans all the way to Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
This is stuff they're not going to teach, and they don't want America to be studied in that light. They don't want us to.
Absolutely not. No. The history that is, and I taught history. I taught history in high school for 4 years out of when I first got out of college. It was one of the subjects I taught, and I didn't question what I was teaching back then. I just assumed I was teaching basically the same thing I had been taught is what I was teaching. And then when you start exploring on your own and you start going, well, why wasn't this taught to me in college? So I could share this knowledge. Oh, you don't want that knowledge shared. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's the undergird of oppression in this country. It is the basis, not having knowledge, just like during before the Inquisition, where the papacy had all the knowledge. You can suppress people and you can subjugate people when you have all of the knowledge, because they don't know, they really don't even understand why they're having to fall in line. They just know they have to fall in line. And so America has been really good at burying the bones of the histories of so many people and the world, I dare say, just for the convenience of being able to continue in this pattern of racism, and in this pattern of projected white supremacy.
And then, one month a year, America tries to make itself feel better by having Black History Month. And they tell the same stories every year about the same people. They don't
Yeah.
they don't expand on it. They don't, they don't and
Yeah.
and that's one thing, that's one thing I think it's important about we do here in EAR with history, is bring these stories out that that don't get talked about in the mainstream. Because the innovation, the intellect, the creativity, the discoveries, the creations um, that have come from the Black community that people aren't even aware of are incredibly large in number. I'll just
Yeah.
say,
I almost want to do a t-shirt and say, you think you know Black history, and then at the bottom, you have no idea.
Hey, Star, I had none.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Beginning of
yeah.
2020, I was like, who is this?
But the thing is,
Mansa Musa.
we call it Black history, but it's American history.
Yeah.
It's all of our history. It's just it's never been told from the Black perspective.
Same thing with the Bible. I
Yeah,
dare say that Black
Absolutely.
history,
And I'm gonna
that
and for,
history is Black history.
exactly.
and for the American Doofus Show watchers that are on here, I'm going to be talking about the Bible quite a bit more on the Doofus Show.
Oh, Barry. Ooh, be careful.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
Be careful.
I know, I know, I know.
But I was gonna say, that's the thing too. If we talking about Black history, no, we're not talking about American Black history. No, Black history. So
We're talking about global history.
yeah, it was so much I did not know, and it was just like I knew more white history than I did Black
Yeah,
history.
absolutely.
How does
Yeah,
that happen?
and yeah, the amount of Black history that hasn't been brought to the forefront in America, uh, I'm sure is minuscule compared to that hasn't been brought forth from the rest of the world. That's
Exactly.
been
You know, it's ironic. You go to some of these other countries, they either love you or they hate you. You go to some countries and they revere, Black people are revered, they know our history. They know who we are. They know who we are. But then you go to some countries and they've taken the American story of who we are. And so they treat us just like some of the Southern white people treat us, people that really hate us. So, I mean, it's luck of the draw when you go somewhere. But, when you walk into another country and you present yourself as a human being, there are people that just can't deny that, no fear, and you treat other people as human beings. You get a lot of traction from that. You get a lot of so I always encourage people to be your best human self.
Barry, real quick, how much time do we have? Because I forgot to mention something.
Yeah, we got enough time.
Okay,
I
so
just I hate to go real long because
oh, I know
people
people are not gonna watch it.
yeah,
I do, but
yeah,
I'm at work with my headset, so
yeah.
it's just like I can listen to a 2 hour interview, but yeah, I know. But I'm going to talk more about this because I don't even have all the information um, in the last episode to the series. But Dr. Claude Anderson is working on a project that everybody can support, including white people. It's a group called the Finley Group that he's working with. It's a black-owned group that they're trying to build a highway railroad system um, going through the cotton belt, and he's trying to pretty much make it predominantly black owned. And he wants wants to build. It starts from Atlanta, Georgia. It goes through Shreveport, Louisiana. Um, it goes through.
Mississippi.
I think it's either Mississippi or Alabama, and then it ends up in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to go 250 to 300 miles per hour, and at each stop, he wants to build a bunch of black businesses around that. And he's been, petitioning the government to go ahead and the Department of Transportation to okay it, because he said they are shovel ready. He has his investors, everything ready. He has the plan ready, and it's a form. It's not reparation, but it's a form of black empowerment economically. So he has asked people to write your local congressman, write your Senate, and if you want more information on it, it's called the Finley Group. He said you could email info@finleygroup.com. So Finley Group is spelled Finley. I have GRY on here.com. I'll get it for the next episode.
Okay.
Here's the number, just to double check and make sure the email is right. It's 205-856-3022.
Okay.
So, my people, if you are serious about supporting us becoming economical power, this is the project that we need to get behind, and this is the types of activities that we need to concentrate instead of just talking about stuff in March. No, we need to actually do something that's boots on the ground, that's not reactionary, and that's productive. This is very productive, and this man has dedicated his life to his people, and the least we can do is support him and make sure we petition whoever we need to, write letters, keep the phone line blowing up for your local congressmen and representatives. And Department of Transportation, so they can approve this project and we can get this thing working. He said it'll take 3 years, 3 to 5 years to build this,
and it's a high-speed rail line, basically, right?
It'll be the only one in America because China already has one.
Yeah, Japan was noted for
a couple European countries have one. This
Germany.
The only predominantly black-owned high-speedway rail system in America. He wants to do that. He's pretty much done all the legwork. I don't even think he wants any money from the government. I think
it ties right in with economics.
Absolutely.
And what about Killer Mike? Killer Mike has a bank. Have you seen any traction on that? He wants to start another black bank.
I have. I actually sent my information, and I haven't heard much.
Okay.
I was going to be able to open up an account, but like I said, I think it's just moving too slow.
Yeah, they've just gotten it off the ground. Just a little.
Yeah. So I'm just waiting for more information to open up an account. But I
But
did.
Those are solutions, to the plight of where we are, and that doesn't mean that we're excluding anybody else. It just means that we're doing some things for ourselves,
or we're doing what everybody else has done.
right? Because we can't depend on being included, having a seat at the table, in any other society and any other group of people that come here.
No, and for those watching that are thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to get reparations, we're going to get a bunch of money, no matter what that term represents as far as how much a bunch means to you, that could be what's in your head. Keep in mind, I've said this a couple of times, in the 50s and into the 60s, members of the Black community were making enough money, but that didn't mean access to anything. And I bring this up simply to say there are no Black owners in the NFL, despite the fact that 83% of the players in the NFL are Black or members of communities of color. And there are more than enough members of the Black community that could pool their wealth, if not individually, by an NFL team. So,
but see, Barry, that's not the problem.
I know it's not the problem. I just want to make
I'm
sure
talking about
people
on that
understand.
subject, they get blocked out all the time.
Yeah.
it's almost like a political thing. So we just need to start our own damn league. We need to start our own NBA league and our own NFL league.
I'm with you on that.
And whatever we dominate in, in numbers, we need to rule. Whatever that is.
We just take all the talent, like a vacuum out of it, and
Exactly.
just yeah.
College.
Yeah. Yeah.
You leave us white people watching Johnny Manziel play football on Sunday afternoons. Come on now, that ain't right.
Y'all can come play with us.
Y'all got ball.
Hey, y'all can come play for us. Y'all can come play for us, Barry.
Look, you got your gentleman's game.
We've got golf. And now, okay, now I got to say something about Tiger Woods when it comes to golf. And blessings and in all sincerity, blessings and healing upon Tiger Woods after what happened to him. I'm not making fun of Tiger Woods or anything like that, but I think it's important people see us talking like this and being able to laugh and joke, because that's what humanity should be. The three of us put a lot of effort into trying to share and to inform and to give you information, give you something to think about. But at the end of the day, all of us are just people. We're all connected, and it's a lot more healing when we can laugh together than when we're pointing weapons at each other.
That's right. And I think the crux of really just coming into your own in this society and wanting to be a better human being, just be honest with yourself. Like Marie Justice said, be honest with yourself and who you are in the construct of all of this, and be honest with other people.
And take your soul back.
See something wrong, say something.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to step up and engage another human being at a human level. That's one of the healing factors of doing this work. You have to have the courage to say something and to walk in justice. You have to.
Absolutely. And you have to have the humility to understand that white people have responsibility in this.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I didn't own any slaves, but that doesn't matter. That's not the issue.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is the lack of understanding in the white community, and the lack of willingness to open the mind, in my opinion. So
absolutely.
King, give us the last word, my man.
Well, until next time.
Yeah.
So the next episode is going to be really interesting. It's going to dig into those three areas that I talked about: free labor, land. I forgot the last one. Rewind, you'll find out.
Inherited wealth. It was inherited wealth, free labor, and land. Yeah.
So just make sure you all tune in next time, and then you definitely want to tune in for the last episode, because I'm going to be breaking open that book and talking about group economics and how we can really plan to structure ourselves to be a superpower and create our own table based off of what Dr. Anderson teaches.
And the book's by Dr. Claude Anderson.
Claude Anderson. If you Google him, there is no shortage.
Say the title again, if you will, for everyone.
He has a lot of books, but the one I'm reading from is Black Labor, White Wealth, and his probably most popular and powerful book is Powernomics. Okay, like I said, he has his own website. You can go purchase his. People probably think I'm probably getting paid to advertise.
Yeah.
No, I really like him. But you can go on his website and you can purchase his books directly. If you're going to buy it that way, it might cost you a little bit of extra money, but buy it directly from him, so the proceeds will go directly to him. And
then when if you go and look at some of his works, a lot of times it'll take you to other works. Just do your homework, explore a little bit. I encourage everyone to just do their homework and take a chance and read some of the material out there that's well researched and that's based on historical fact. And I think you'll be a better person for it.
Yep, and a lot of the work gets revered because I got here just through a series of opening up. My first book that I opened up, well, before that one, that book was just about slavery and how we were treated. I was like, all right, that shit's crazy. I'm gonna need therapy after reading that. But Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of a Black Civilization. I love that book.
Yeah,
that's where it all started. Look, she's looking back. She
Yeah.
got it. She got it. Yep. I want to get the paperback. I have the audio book, but I want to get the paperback. But I'm telling you, man, my people, we perish from a lack of knowledge. We just need to gain the knowledge necessary to not only know history and know not how to make the same mistakes, but to move forward. And you know, like I said, just learn something new every single day.
every day. That's right.
You need to grow the capacity of that brain. Feed it. So that's my word.
All right.
Star, you have a final word?
No. Thank you everyone for a great conversation. I call these my living room chats, and but it's for a greater cause. I think that when people have more information, they have more to work with. You know, if you're building a house and you don't have any wood, you're just standing outside in the rain. So I like to think that we're projecting knowledge and we're giving people resources and to kind of do some introspective work. So EAR is about that work, and it's not. We do research on these things. It's not just talking about Black issues. It's talking about the collective and how we collectively become better people.
And my last word is going to be a reminder that you can go down into the description, and if you want to help financially support this this movement as we get it off the ground, there's a link to do so. T-shirts are coming, and if you want to get in on kind of the ground floor, if you will, as far as public. Our first public meeting is going to be coming up this Sunday. Now from 3 to 3:30, the EAR leadership group, if you will have a meeting. And then at 3:30, if you would like to join, there is going to be 100 spots open on the Zoom for members, for those that want to become members of the organization. So look forward to that on Sunday. And of course, the three of us will be there with others. And next Wednesday, we'll have part 2 of this. And King, give a little bit of tease for the people. What's coming in part 2?
Part 2 is going to dig into the ways that white wealth was created and specific events. I mean, it's going to get super specific on the events leading up pretty much to present day of some of the significant incidents that really transferred that wealth. Pretty much started from the 14th century. We're not going to go back to the 14th century, but from the 14th century leading up to the 17th, 18th century, and really the 19th century, you're going to really get key incidences that happened that transferred that wealth over from Africa or Black Africans to Europe and America.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. On behalf of Star Child, on behalf of Comedic King, thank you very much. Again, if you want to donate, please do so. And for those of you watching, we will see you. Hold on a second. There we go. For those of you watching, we will see you next Wednesday night. For those of you wanting to become part of EAR, hopefully we'll see you Sunday at 3:30. Email American Doofus, all one word, to get a link to the meeting on Sunday, americandoofus@gmail.com. Thank you all very much. Until next time, it is EAR, End All Racism, on the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Walsh. Good night.